order. So I don't know who was first. Yeah, please.
I'll just shoot. Brian, super good. You woke. I mean, I was really thinking I would fall asleep by now, but you've kind of really woken us up, and I love the conversation here with Dima and Alexander and everybody on the chat. Super. I just want to. I have a. I'm going to keep it short because we only have 10 minutes, but I don't believe that you're interpreting Conway's law correctly. I do not believe that technology drives organization in the way you describe it, and having implemented agile in companies of 50,000 plus people, it is not the internet driving agile. I think, as Dima and others suggested, in reality, all the work that we had to do was on culture, right? Getting the legacy technology and the backlogs right. Frankly, that was the minor part of the work that we did. But I think there's some fundamental challenges here that I just want to throw to you. I think that there are some limitations in your comparison between DAOs and TL, because the decentralized authority in DAO, I actually don't think that's the case in TL. There is no central authority in terms of a single control holder, but there is a central authority in regards to an ideology, a belief system. And if we look at Hire as an example of an ecosystem that uses smart contracts, at least what the CEO of Hire is always sustaining is that the common culture is really creating the trust, whereas your trust machine is only creating control. And you come into all the challenges with being able to create complete contracts. And I think from psychological research, we see a lot that complete contracts erode predisposition to trust. So in reality, you have a little bit of a contradiction in full control on the one hand, but that limits trust. And then your central authority creates a governance mechanism whereby the token holders are the people making decisions, which is also not the by advice governance process that Lalou is advocating in his book, right? So I think if we went component by component, what's the governance? What's the relationship between the individuals? What's the relationship between fragmentation, autonomy on the one hand, and integration, kind of centralization of a creed system, a shared goal? On the other hand, we would find lots of subtle differences. So would love to sit down and have further conversations. I'll leave it here.
The theme I'd like to kind of maybe start.
So we're running out.
Well, thank you. I'm going to do a proper self-introduction first, and then I will start talking. So here's the one iteration of the name of this talk. I've never talked about this in this way, just versions of that. You can see a full screen slide? Or does it look ugly? Okay. So the inspiration for this talk is actually coming from a concept that I learned from a colleague, and that's the concept of feed forward. So what is the thing that we can now already tell will be a problem in a few years? Because that's what I'm thinking about with this whole self-management business. What is going to create issues? And maybe there's some early signs of that we can see, and maybe there's things we could do to already deal with the problems that we project we might have. So that's where I'm coming from with this. But first, let me tell you who you're talking to. My name is Ted. I do this self-management stuff full-time, mostly with sociocracy. That's my main focus. I come really from academia, from linguistics, but that seems a long time ago now. I'm one of the co-founders of Sociocracy for All, which is a nonprofit based in the US, but working globally. And you can see here that I estimate that I spend 35% of my time working as a worker in the organization, and about 2/3 of my time I'm with clients and students. 5 kids, I live in an intentional community. I'm German, I've been here for a while though. I've written 2 books, and I have one coming that doesn't have a title yet. And June seems optimistic sometimes, but sometimes I think that's even possible. And by the way, the book is actually like the later chapters. It's kind of a similar topic than as what we're talking about today. So if your idea is brilliant, please allow for me to steal it. So here's what it looks like, what it's going to look like today. So introduction is already done. We're done with that. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is where are we? Like, what are some successes and obstacles in the self-management world that we see? Where might we be going? Some early signs of change, and then we will play. And it will be a participatory game that was inspired by a game that my kids love to play, which I will explain later. So now I have a question for you, though. Would you say that the familiarity and practice of self-management is increasing overall? I'm going to pause really quick and see what people say. Also, I have to find my chat. There we go. Would you say that that is the case? I'm not gonna challenge you on it either way. I'm just curious what other people think. Is it overall increased? Okay, Artie says yes. Yes. Stephanie says yes. Okay. Lots of yeses. Okay. Yes, with an exclamation mark even. And and there you go. I wish it was, but no, or very slowly. It's the same. It is the same as before. Okay. Yeah, and I'm actually a little inconclusive because, of course, unless we have kind of hard data, right, we will always carry our own bias, because obviously I know zillions of people that use sociocracy or other systems, but that's because that's the people who I hang out with, right? But there are some anecdotes and some things. But first, I wanted to just kind of get a sense of where we're at. Like, for example, I looked at Google Trends. That's a great way to get a reality check, because we're such a small movement still compared to what people Google. If you look at, is consent going up? Like, how many people search for consent as a word? Well, that could all be sexual consent, so we have no idea whether this is actually telling us anything. Then I looked at sociocracy. And by the way, these are not absolute numbers at all, right? They're just relative, I think, to the highest that it has been in that time frame. So this is 100 because it's the highest in the time frame, and it does look like it's going up, I would say, right? So is it? I mean, well, there's a lot one could say about that. And then I looked at trends for holacracy, and I was shocked to see that is actually more going down than it's going up right now. So taking them together, because holacracy in absolute terms is searched more than sociocracy by, well, quite significantly. So that kind of drags us down. So then I looked at self-organization. So I don't know what to do with that, I guess. I did not come up with a clear, like, oh, this proves, the movement is growing. And I actually asked Tim from Teal Around the World, like, hey, can I have the numbers of the past few conferences? Because I was kind of hoping that there would be like 5 data points and it's kind of exponential, but it has increased, but I don't think there's enough history yet. So that's kind of where we are. So I would also say it's increasing. It is increasing, but it's still a little, yeah, wishful thinking is said in the chat. All right. Now, what I want to look at, and that is already, now all the rest is basically feeding you ideas for the game. And it's also at the same time a little bit my getting off the chest all the things that I'm worried about, because I'm worried about quite a few things, honestly. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm pouring my life and my energy into the self-management stuff. I do believe that it's great. And there are a few things I'm worried about. And especially that's if I project, if this just keeps growing and growing and growing, what would I be very worried about? So, and there's 4 levels that I want to look at. One is individual level, team level, organization level, and then societal level. That's a very coarse kind of categorization, but you'll see where I'm going with it. So on an individual level, I'm worried that there's still so much ego around that I notice just gets in the way, right? So that's something. So now if we want to project, let's say in 15 years, because that's going to be the game, in 15 years, everything is self-organized. Okay. What would I worry about? Like transforming our egos, taking a little, like dialing down our egos within 15 years. We should, if we want to be all self-managed in 15 years, we should work on the ego thing now. And I know many people are already, but that's something where we project we're not going to be ready. Another thing that we're not going to be ready with is healthy boundaries. And by that, I mean simple things as, I love all the comments in the chat, but I'm trying to ignore them right now. I'm going to have a blast later reading them. So the healthy boundaries is also an issue. And for example, today I was having a little chat conversation on Twitter with somebody who was basically saying, wait, could I work on the weekend if I really want to, you know, like, could I overwork, but is that self-exploitation? And that's something I worry about when purpose-driven organization basically almost tip into this unhealthy self-exploitation kind of space. And distracting me, but it is funny. Okay, then on the individual level, I will actually move it away now. On the individual level, also the co-responsibility thing. I noticed just again and again with clients and in training that it takes a long time for people to snap out of these unhealthy relationships with responsibility, like trying, you know, the whining, the complaining, the not making proposals, but only complaining about things, like all of that. And then on the other hand, there are people who are just kind of behaving like bulldozers, right? They're maybe taking responsibility, but they're not listening. So there's just such a slim or such a small path, right, where we're in balance. And it's really hard to hit that one, especially because hardly any of us have had any role models with us. So that worries me. Like, where are we going to get all those healthy role models to teach ourselves and teach each other and teach the next generation? That's in the way. Then on the team level, I'm really worried about process literacy. Like, just so many people that are, you know, like just so many processes that still need to make it into people's actual practice so that everybody is as comfortable using processes in a meeting and selecting a meeting as they are with driving a car. I personally spend more time in meetings than I spend driving a car. So we better catch up because it tends to be more important to facilitate a meeting. So let's make that happen. And if we project again, in 15 years, everything should be self-managed. What can we do now? That's that feed forward thing. So that in 15 years, everybody just knows the stuff. And by that, I don't mean any particular system, but a system. That would be great. Next, and this is my longest slide, by the way. Next, communication. There's not all that much to say about that because I'm assuming you all know what I mean. Just good communication is, as we all know, super important in self-managed organizations, and we trip over it all the time, right? Alongside that, conflict skills. If we want to be more fluid in our work, we will bump into issues more often that we'll have to solve ourselves. So are we ready for that? What should we do now so that in 15 years, that is just easy? All right, organizational level. This is all basic. This is, as I said, just getting all this stuff off my chest because I don't want to just play a game and just go like, oh, the world in 15 years is going to be this brilliant, problemless place. Because, as I said, I'm actually very concerned about a bunch of things, especially actually the things that come now later, because this might even be all trainable and maybe, you know, maybe, I mean, I guess under the surface, we are all learning and it is improving. But let's look at these. On an organizational level, I worry very much about information scale, especially information flow, especially when it comes to scaling. I see organizations with 50 people that struggle with the information flow. It doesn't get any better when we triple or, you know, times whatever factor that. So when everybody is deciding things in different places, how do we understand what the whole is? How do we do the sense making of it all? Which also connects to other points here, which is how do we even know how to make a budget together? How do we understand each other and each other's work well enough to make budgetary decisions about each other's work? And then also, how do we do the sense making and understand each other enough so that we can come up with, so that we understand each other's strategies and kind of a coherent strategy, at least for our department. So that's also something that I worry how we're going to figure that all out, because we're a little bit walking just with our fingers crossed forward right now. And I think there should be more energy on these things. On a societal level, almost done here. On a societal level, there is all the systemic oppression thing that traditionally has been underemphasized in the teal movement from my point of view. So we can't just pretend these things are gone and that the impact of them is gone. We have to factor it in, otherwise it's gonna just explode around us, which it is in some teams. So we have to find a way of moving forward while holding and healing those spaces, right? Legal considerations and economics. So how do you have a self-organized organization while having a lot of inequality? How does that go together? How do we have a decentralized organization while the legal system still requires that one person is responsible? Like, all of these things are not going to fit so well. So we're bumping into that more and more as a movement, right? I know my clients are, and we are as an organization. So that needs addressing. And I know these things are being addressed. I'm just worried about the pacing, I guess. So I wanted to say all those things so that we're not just all with, like, what is it in English? Pink glasses? No, I'm translating from German. Never mind. You'll know what I mean. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about what we think within Sociocracy for All so far. We've been working on theory of change there to get a little bit of a sense of where we are in the development overall, because we are, as an organization, not just looking at sociocracy for our clients or sociocracy for ourselves. We want to support the movement. We're a movement support organization. So we kind of track, where's the movement at? Like, how are things progressing there? And this is our very basic theory of change. We assume that first people need to know about sociocracy, which we can track somewhat. At least we know that sociocracy will be used more. We're starting to collect better data on that. And then at some point, we project that things like that, in the best possible outcome, will just become a normal way of operating. And however one could track that. But I was thinking, like, if only I had the time and space to analyze job listings, because more and more job listings include something like that. That's totally anecdotal. I would love to have data on it. So, how many jobs are listed with, we run whatever, we're self-managed. A plus for your application would be if you know Sociocracy, Holacracy, or any of those systems. That would be cool. But I have a bunch of things anecdotally that I'm going to show you in 2 slides. So now what we do, though, is these 3 categories are too broad to even really look at them in a meaningful way. Like, I don't care so much about the overall Google Trends. I want to know how it's evolving in different parts of society. So what we do is we have a sector approach, and this is completely, not completely, I drew it on gut feeling, okay, but we do have some data that I am also basing it on, but no like official data. It's just how many people we know within our system that have certain affiliations to certain sectors. Like, for example, I have somewhat unknown, actually a little in the teal movement, but very known in the sociocracy movement. Intentional communities are the bright stars in terms of a sector. They've been going at it for longer than most other sectors and made great progress. Then consulting firms somehow are early adopters, co-ops, tech businesses, nonprofits are a little behind, other businesses, especially production and so on, behind. Schools, and a new sector on our map is congregations. They are starting to pick this up, so that's cool. And this is totally non-representative and all. I just want to give you a sense of where, you know, that it makes more sense to zoom in and look at different sectors than to just look at society or the world at large, right? And this is all Western world as well, because that's what we have data in, because most of our work is in English. Now I have some anecdotes for you, just again, because I want to warm up your brains a little bit for the exercise or the game. I mean, it's a game, not an exercise. Scratch that, it's a game. So as I said, intentional communities are kind of the bright star, because it happened, I think, 2.5 years ago. I was on a call with somebody who reached out to me because of their use of sociocracy and all. And something happened that I had never experienced before. And it was actually one of those before and after moments for me. And it was that a group contacted me and said, we're using sociocracy, but we don't actually know what it is, kind of a thing. And I thought, that's odd. That typically doesn't happen. Like, what do you mean you don't, like, how did you choose to use it then? And that person told me, oh, we sent somebody to do some research, like a group of 2 did some research on what are like typical governance methods for intentional communities. And they came back and said, sociocracy is what people do. And they asked me, that's right? And I said, oh, yeah, totally. Totally. That's, yeah, no, that is what communities are nowadays doing. Think to myself, wow, that happened now. And it is also true. If you look at the numbers for like new communities that are forming, they now, a significant portion of them starts out sociocratically, which is kind of cool. Then very much along those lines, I've had like a whole series of clients, new clients of mine, that come to me and say, we're doing sociocracy, teach us what it is. And I think, wow, how can you choose something that you don't even really know about? But it just seems to be such kind of, you know, if you go back to those different phases where it said at some point it's just going to be common sense. So some people start to talk about it like it's common sense, although they don't even know about it, and therefore they now want to use it. Then big organizations are waking up, like pharma and other industries, and our people that we train now get hired from consulting by consulting firms. That's a little obnoxious, and then they get hired away. And then pharma institutions, this is totally just unvetted data, but I notice I get invited more and more to do classes in universities. So just this kind of creeping into formal institutions, right? That is also something that's happening that kind of is an early sign of, oh, something is shifting here. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. So now, last slide, second to last slide before the game. I want to just feed you kind of things to think about. Like if, let's say nothing else changes in society, and all that changes is that all the organizations, institutions, and so on become self-managed. What impact would that have on society? So there are a few things that I came up with, but I'm sure it's not an exhaustive list, and I would love for you to add it. Like we are, and I know they are in development, new legal forms. So the legal system has to change to accommodate us, basically. There's going to be more and more people saying, no, that's not going to work for us. We need better legal systems to accommodate the self-management movement. Then economics, there's going to be a little bit of a shift. You know, as we know, more transparent pay leads to less inequality. So as organizations are more self-managed, they're going to be more likely to have transparent pay. That means there's going to be some shift around economics, which I have no idea where it's going to end up, because at the same time, inequality is increasing. So that's going to be interesting. Then what I'm looking at is, and you spoke, but I'm looking at is if only what is the impact of self-management on society? So looking just in that direction, that's why I set it up that way. Then we'll need more tools that really work for self-management. That's not so super interesting, but that is happening a lot, right? That people start to develop things. Then there's some spillover effect into politics that I know. Like people who use processes like that in kind of formal government. Then interpersonal sphere, that is changing too, though I think that's actually backwards, because I think it's kind of just more parallel development, like people making their own rules and just consent-based decision-making in relationships is also something worth mentioning. And then there is a teeny little bit of self-management in higher ed and schools. Relationship anarchy is the idea that instead of taking relationship boxes like roles, like let's say husband and wife, as just this is what it is, and now you just do that, like basically rules that are roles that are given by society. And relationship anarchy is the idea that you can make your own relationship and define it in the way that instead of it's very parallel actually to how roles are changing in general. Instead of this boss and underling relationship, you can define what those roles look like, and the same thing is also happening in interpersonal relationships in its own pocket of society. So, and I see some people are arguing with some of the things that I'm saying, and that's great, because I think at the same time, there's this quote of Tom Atlee, I think, everything is getting better and worse at the same time, faster and faster. I think a lot of these things are kind of, going in opposite directions, and we're here to watch what happens. And that goes along with the last thing I want to say. And I think, so this is Daniel Schmachtenberger. I'm a big fan. And one of the things he said was the answer to all the problems is all the solutions. So I gave you a bunch of my brain dump, but I'm absolutely confident that I only scratched the surface, and that if we put our heads together, then we would get more and more of the solutions, because no one person can know all the problems or all the solutions. So everybody who's looking for the thing that's going to fix everything, I think, is going to be out of luck, because it's not going to be the thing. It's going to be all the different things. So in that sense, there's a lot of interdependence between all the different systems. Right? I tried to simplify it earlier, but reality is everything is constantly mutually influencing each other. And one thing that Daniel Schmachtenberger says about that is that means that everybody who has some sphere of influence, which is everybody, should look at the whole system's impact and ask themselves, the thing that I do in my little corner of the world, can I foresee what happens? Like, what is the impact on the rest of all the other systems of what we are doing? And maybe says something some negative impact that I should actually be aware of and try to mitigate somehow. So everybody is acting in their own sphere, but is considering the impact more on a whole systems level. And that's what we're trying to do in our game. And now we're playing. Here's the game. We are going to play. It could have been better or worse, actually, depending on how optimistic or pessimistic this whole thing made you. And both is fine. I don't want to limit it at all. So here's the game that I'm basing it on. My kids play this game that is called It Could Have Been Worse. And it's basically one of those chain games where one person says, my alarm bell rung and I noticed I was 1 hour late for school. And then the next person says, but it could have been worse. My alarm bell rung and I noticed I'm one hour late for school, but then I also missed the bus. Okay, and then the next person says, I woke up late and I missed the bus, and then they add another thing, and the whole thing just turns into this horrible day, and they find that funny. Now, of course, one can also play it in a better version, right? Like where everything just gets better and better and better. And I'm kind of torn. I kind of want both, but I think we're going to maybe lean a little on the better, like how everything is going to get better in 15 years kind of a thing. But you are in control of that by what you feed us. So we're basically playing a day, the story of a day in our lives in a fully self-organized future in 15 years or so. Oh, I think I said 12 years. Look at that. I was more optimistic when I made the slides than I am right now. So our world in 12 years. I'm going to give you some context. All major institutions, private and public, are self-organized. And governance exists, but they're little hands off. Let's just ignore that for a moment because that's a complicated question that I don't necessarily want to touch. In short, there's choice in all areas of our lives. So what would really happen if that were the case? And both in our personal lives and on societal level. That sounds like an easy game, right? We just have to imagine how everything changes all at once on all the levels. So, but that's why we're not alone, but we're playing it together. And I think, actually, let me just show you my slides because then I'm going to be slides off, I think. So we have these 3 different phases. One is home life, then public life, and then kind of leisure time, just to make it easier for us to not have such a broad space of possibility. So thank you, Stephanie. So the phase 1 kind of starts with, I wake up in the morning and then what's going to happen in that magical future where everything is the way we're working towards right now? How's it going to be different? And then we're going to pause after a while when we run out of ideas. And then we say, what happens next? How do you spend your days? And then how do you spend what would traditionally be after work? But I didn't write that because I knew I would get a slap on the wrist if I even tried to already determine that. So there we are.
Thanks, Ted. I'm going to add myself to the spotlight. I am.
Because I requested Stephanie's help, I was like, maybe this is a little too courageous to play this by myself. I need 2 minds on this at the very least.
I wonder can we do a quick gut check in the chat whether you want the slides up as prompts, or Ted, you and I could put them in the chat, but I think to go off our memory might be a bit hard.
I got it.
Okay, chat is great. Okay. So yeah, Ted and I are going to be riffing on this together. We'll be sharing out loud, building on what you all put in the chat. So
we're basically telling the story, but you have to feed us keywords. Or you raise your hand if you want to tell it yourself. So we're going to wake up in the morning and then what's different? Like I can start on this one. Oh God, it's already getting complicated. And this is of course a total experiment. I've never done this before. Well, first thing I want to say is it's already light out because I didn't wake up from my alarm because I can go to work whenever I want to. And then, Stephanie.
And then I wake up when the sun wakes me up and when my body wants to wake up. And then I drink some kind of ethical local herb drink, maybe made out of a tree from my yard.
And then I go to meditation and take 10 minutes in my local meditation group because my health insurance is giving me bonus points if I meditate regularly.
And then I decide to dance. I dance in the street. I dance in my home. I dance up with my coworkers. Dancing is just one of the ways that we move through the world.
And then so while we were dancing, there was no music. We were just dancing. But then I realized somebody put a piano there. So now I'm playing the piano while other people are dancing because none of us has to go anywhere because there is universal basic income.
And then I start singing because now people are dancing and someone is playing the piano and I want to use my voice and have energy because I've slept so well and I'm relaxed. So I just can't stop singing.
Now in a really, really good mood because of all the dancing and all the sleeping well and all the being relaxed and in choice. And apparently I still have to grind my coffee for tomorrow though, because I do like coffee, but I have to grind it myself for reasons that are beyond me, but that's what it says. Ooh, you get the Roberto comment now.
And then we get to hear and feel our intuition and allow that to both have us each make decisions from our own sense of agency and contribute to collective wisdom of where we're all going together.
And all this dancing and singing is really jogging my mind. And all of a sudden, I have this amazing idea for a creative project. And I'm absolutely sure that it's going to change and improve the world. And and I call my favorite coworkers to see if they're excited about the project too.
And I have all the space and time to listen and tap into my real truth. And sometimes my real truth could be that I'm going to go back to bed because it's cold.
Apparently my kids are home too. That kind of messes with my perfect day right now. So apparently they are now jumping around and jumping on me in my bed where I just went back to. So now I will though get very immersed in my project, and the kids get bored around playing on me, and they will go out in the safe street to play with other kids.
So during the dance, someone slipped and fell. But I have the time and space and capacity to help them. So I got to spend part of my day being of service to others.
But now it is time. It is meeting time. And there are a lot of decisions we have to make, because now we have all this power to make all those decisions. And while before, the town was completely run by just having people whose job it was to deal with things. But now we have to deal with a meeting on our wastewater treatment. And there's a problem there that we don't actually know anything about. And that's why the meeting takes a long time. And I get decision fatigue. You're right, we're still in eyes. But there were a few B's here. All right. But it looks like we've already transitioned into work. So now maybe we're in second phase, eh? Or did you want to add something, Stephanie?
No, I think, yeah, we seem to be headed into the work.
Which is also interesting, by the way, that everybody kind of got antsy after a while and wanted to send us off to work. How much singing and dancing can you do in the morning? All right.
So phase 2 is work life, is that right?
Daytime, whatever. I mean, if that's work, then it's work.
Oh, I see. Okay, so phases are different times of day.
Yeah, no, originally when I was thinking about it, or when you and I talked about it, it was kind of pre-work, work, and after work, but that's an assumption.
True.
Just like the assumption that I used I instead of we.
Right. Great. So phase 2 is after my morning routine, I.
After our morning routine, we do another dance session. And although I'm a little tired from all the dancing, apparently we're still dancing.
And then I get to put on whatever clothes I want to express myself, and I also get to enjoy how my colleagues are, and my friends and loved ones are dressing in the ways that are most like them, however they want to dress.
And we're checking in, and my coworkers are happy to see me, and they tell me what's going on, and we're chatting a little and supporting each other. And hold on, I can show how I feel to my teams. Yes, so everybody's really sharing deeply, and we have this great sense of connection between each other. Yeah, it's really a great way to experience that beginning of the day with my team.
And I just feel like free and creative and energized, even as I go to the collective recycling and composting and growing vegetables in my neighborhood.
Oh, and one thing on that is also that my day is not, so all these meetings for things that are not work, like working on my project, like the recycling team in my neighborhood, that all happens kind of at random times of the day, because we can just choose when we do stuff. So it's all flowing between kind of what would be private or volunteer and what would be work.
Yeah, there's definitely no back-to-back Zoom meetings. maybe one or two computer meetings throughout the day, and then to the vegetable garden and the meeting to discuss politics in the neighborhood. Maybe voting on some new green space.
And all the walking is good, all the meditation is good. And I want to jump at something here, because what we haven't said yet is that we live in one of those 15-minute cities where everything can just be in person, because all we need to do is ride our bike to a place and everybody does that. So we have all these co-working spaces and nobody has to commute to work. We all just walk or ride our bike to work, because we can just choose where we go.
Exactly. There's lots of sunlight. You can see the sky. And yeah, just lots of space to move our bodies.
There is a little bit of a blip because we have whipped something together and reorganized, but that was easy. We do that all the time. It's totally easy because everybody's so flexible. So the customer was totally fine at any, like they probably didn't even notice.
Right when you said that, I think your video blipped a little. So. Yeah. So, yeah, something happened with the wastewater plant that was concerning. But my friends immediately noticed that I was worried about it, and they came and supported me. We came together and supported each other. Really
nice. And we haven't talked yet about our workspace, but it's so beautiful. This co-working space that's like natural sunlight, so we're basically in the light all day. And there's art, and there are all these places where we can bump into each other, just interesting spots, and where we can connect with other people from the other team, so we know what's happening there.
There's also you can travel on a sailing ship. I think I might take a cruise to Argentina soon with some friends. We'll be learning from how they self-organize, because there's this problem coming up where we haven't reached consent in a few different circles. People have been rotating roles too frequently, so there's not a lot of continuity. But the good news is you can always sail to Argentina to learn more from how other people do it, and then integrate those learnings when you come home.
Yeah, but while we're getting ready for the trip to Argentina, or to shop for boats, or for weights, no, it's not going to shopping for boats. We will actually look at shared boat situations, collectively owned boats. And but then there is an earthquake, and all our plans for the day are changed because now we have to help a lot of people at the same time.
Mm. But even though a lot of injuries and trauma have kind of been shaken up by this earthquake, because we have such healthy, beautiful, natural surroundings and good food, we're all able to recover and heal in resilient ways together.
Whew, so many interesting things about meetings. Also, just that we can have them on sailing boats. Also, we actually decide to all go together. But sometimes we also have meetings in swimming pools and rooftop gardens and pubs and cool caves and somewhere else. Oh, on dance floors, of course. Though, I mean, our whole co-working space is a dance floor, obviously. That we've already elaborated on that. So much dancing. I'm exhausted just by dancing, to be honest.
Everyone is trained in massage therapy. So as you get tired and sore from dancing, you can take a break and receive a massage or give a massage to make sure that we can keep up the dancing.
Can also choose to stop dancing at this point. And oh yes, all more about the built environment, how everything is. Oh, I see. The earthquake wasn't actually so bad because all the natural building materials actually absorbed the earthquake shock. So never mind, there were actually nobody needs help. But it is a little funky to get to the collective boat situation because the horses that pull the buggy, because we don't use oil and gas anymore, they are a little confused by the whole earthquake and they are not showing up right now.
But that's okay because we can dance while we wait.
A lot of dancing. That's what I'm taking from all this here.
But there's no peer pressure. There's no peer pressure anymore. So if you don't want to dance, you really don't have to.
And now you have a room for yourself. And now, hold on, I need to edit this. The day is winding down. So we have to watch time here. The day is winding down, and we notice the edit from and I into Andui. We have collectively decided to stop removing snow in the winter. We have skating and skiing lanes. I have somehow imagined this as always summer. How's there snow already? That can't be.
It can be whatever season is your favorite season.
It's all going to be hot by that time anyway. Active, yeah, all of that. So the sun still sets in our wonderful future. That's good because that's pretty.
And there are still churches where we go to pray for consent.
Such an interesting thought. We pray.
We also pray to Mother Earth, to Gaia.
Why are we drinking margaritas instead of wine?
Some of us are drinking margaritas instead of wine.
I don't know why. There must be a reason. Because it says new church. Oh,
I see. At church, you have a choice.
Oh, I
drinking
see.
margarita.
Margarita church. There were two themes in this game so far that confuse me. One is the whole church business, and the other one is all the dancing. Do we have weed? Of course we do.
Homegrown or community garden grown.
So that's all you have for the evening activity is wine and weed? Is that really all it is? And praying?
After a day of dancing and singing and flowing between your family life and governance meetings and having meetings in the pool, what do we do next? We hang out by the fireplace. We're fasting. You can fast if you want. I might not.
And we have a sharing circle about emotions, and I get to debrief what all the dancing did, and the horses not showing up, and how I miss wine instead of margaritas.
We get to cook together. We can play a game called What Would Be Better in 12 Years.
And I love what Romina is saying. We need things to complain about. This is a drama-free place, because everybody is so self-responsible, right? Everybody has a clean way of communicating. If there's a problem, we just grab the next person next to us and say, hey, mediate for a moment. We're constantly grateful for the great world we've built. So in the evening, we have nothing to talk about.
So we just keep dancing. Maybe
And
that's why there's so much dancing.
And singing.
There's lots of positive gossip. So everyone's talking about how great everyone else is.
Turn gossip into song and line dancing. Different dance now. What was the other dance before?
Yeah, we have time and space to learn new skills, make art together, some gymnastics. After dancing all day, I don't know if I could do gymnastics.
You have a lot of energy, people. Can we burn our policies and dance around the fire? No. The policies stay in place. I insist. Because otherwise, maybe we can experience wholeness. Is that about drugs again now?
I think it's possible to experience wholeness without drugs, I've heard.
And I'm gonna go to bed in my room by myself, I think. Wasn't there talking about I'm gonna have a room to myself? That
Yes.
stood up as particularly good. Yeah. Art is stimulated by angst and passion. Yeah. What are we gonna talk about?
The creative, what will be the new source of creative tension? We'll have to find out.
And I'm curious what y'all thinking. Besides new ideas.
Yeah, we have about 5 more minutes. Do you want to keep playing? Do you want?
I want to hear a reflection, because I have a reflection, but I've already interjected my reflections here and there.
It's a small enough group that I think a couple people could come off mute too if we want to open up the conversation. I know this isn't we're going off script here, but
I like that a lot. So how's that future looking for you?
I want tickets to the cruise.
I appreciate how connected we are to our bodies and to each other.
how are others feeling about this future?
It feels like there's much less energy wasted on like feelings about not being aligned with our values, and that seems to free up a lot of energy, like less grieving, more just enjoying sense making life.
What is it they say about change? The one thing we know about change is that it's constant. So I'm wondering, when we get there, will we is it a destination? What will we be wanting to change next?
Yeah, and that's where I go to my thing here is Well, the two things. One is, there's the wastewater treatment. I guess I'm worried with everybody wanting more participation in everything that one has to somehow take care of, and it has to be involved in so many things. Curious how that's gonna go. Or whether that will just calm down over time, that we actually don't want to have all these things. And the other one is, I notice, and I know that's not even, I don't know. That's not necessarily what everybody wants to hear or think about this, but I notice myself going like, okay, I said it in joke of that's a lot of dancing, but it's like, but I also want to do things. But we did do things, but there was also a lot of free time to fill without drama. So that's interesting.
I'll just add one more thing. I was thinking about specialization versus generalization. Can we all be masters of everything and know everything about everything in order to make all the decisions?
It felt very organic, like there was a lot of flow and possibilities, but also seemed to take some time, kind of like it's just the beginning of opening your mind in that way.
You mean it takes time once you're there, or it takes time to get there? What did you mean? I'm curious about that.
Like even as we were responding, I could feel in my body too, and in my mind, the restriction and constriction that's still there.
I see.
So I think this kind of feels like a seed that might kind of take some more time through the night, through the weeks to keep responding.
And it also felt like adventure. Somebody's saying in the chat, it's true. I had that too. And just the warmth of it all, just the like, all right, just the lightness and warmth and that sense of, I guess, warmth also just between people. That's, I think, was the nicest thing for me.
This comes from, oh, go ahead.
No, go, you go ahead.
This comes from, there were some questions in the Mentimeter, which we won't be able to get to all of them, but we can talk about the ones that are in here in the spatial chat after. But as a closing, Ted, one of the questions is if you had one wish to make self-management grow or scale faster over the next 15 years, what would your wish be? So I want to grant you one wish.
One of the things.
One wish that will get us closer to the future that we just described.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with teaching these things in school. Of just imagining that in 5 years we have kids graduate who are just super literate at all of this. That would be awesome, because then everything else would be awesome. And if they come out a little less damaged out of school, that would help too. Skilled and less damaged. Then everything is possible, right? If you have people who can work together and whip together a project without driving each other crazy, then what can't we do?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ted, and thank you everyone for playing with us. This was lots of fun.
Phew, and I'm glad.